hello, everybody.
everybody.
Ooh, there's a bad echo there. Where did that come from? Is it gone? Yes, okay,
Yes,
good.
it's gone.
That freaked me out for a minute. So, well, anyway, good evening, everybody, and welcome again to the Warren Files. Tonight we have a topic. I know they've made a couple shows about this, but I never really hear people talk about this. And I understand Kimberly has some. You go by Kim or Kimberly?
Kim, generally. Kimberly
Okay.
when I'm in trouble.
Which is
All right.
more often than you'd think.
Yeah. So we've got some newer faces on. Or I don't want to say newer faces, but let's go ahead and do the quick intro of who everybody is real quick and what you guys do. Let's start with Len.
It's always me.
Because we're going around we got to make sure you're
Okay.
awake. I mean, that's been an issue before, but we're not
My
talking.
name's Lana. I'm regional director of the UK, and I'm working with these two lovely ladies on this new project, which I'm quite excited about.
Cool. Yeah, we're definitely going to talk in detail about that, what you want people to do, in relation to that. I've noticed that page already has 30 people following it.
Yeah,
Something
I
like
haven't
that.
checked.
Yeah, it's good.
I haven't checked either.
So Kim, what's your shtick?
I'm the assistant regional director for New Zealand, and now is it the Pacific Australasia?
I think we've expanded into Asia Pacific now.
Asia Pacific. Yeah.
I think we're now Asia Pacific.
Which is a huge area. My background is I'm a clinical nurse educator. I've been in this for a very long time, but also been interested in the paranormal and helping people for a very long time. And I sort of fell into, I met the right people at the right times and was able to become part of this amazing group.
Cool.
Yay.
Cleo.
Hello. I'm regional director, was Australia and New Zealand, is now Asia Pacific, which still encompasses Australia and New Zealand. I am a witch. I help people who have problems with the paranormal as part of Haunted New Zealand, and Kim is also a member of Haunted New Zealand as well. And I grew up in a haunted house. I've been interested in the paranormal since forever. And one of the very first books that I read was about kind of paranormal and approaching paranormal topics was Life After Life by Raymond Moody, which actually links really nicely into what we're talking about tonight. So, yes.
Cool. So I got to ask you, is Fiji part of your region?
I think yes, it would be. Yes.
Okay, cool. So,
and the Cook Islands, Rarotonga and Aitutaki.
we need to get. Just promise me that you'll include me on a case like that if you ever get one over there, and
Honestly,
especially if
yes.
it needs a site on investigation, I'd be happy to volunteer.
I can't wait to have to go to Fiji for the investigation.
So we can just send a bunch of bad stuff to Fiji, and hopefully somebody gets haunted.
It's a very Christian country, actually.
Is
I
it?
think it predominantly people follow the Christian religions over there, and they do tend to be very religious. So
Same with Tonga. Tonga, 98% of people who live in Tonga are Christian.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
So what is Haunted New Zealand have going on right now? Anything interesting to talk about, or?
we have got a lot of videos in the production stage at the moment. So we have a professional video producer, Ian Quigley. Hi, Ian. Who's on the team, and he's superbly talented. So he films all of our investigations and then puts together like beautiful videos of the stuff that we do. So obviously we don't tend to publicize private cases,
Right.
Unless specifically the people ask us to do that, which has happened.
Yeah.
So usually private cases are exactly that. They are kept private. But when we do public investigations, public buildings, events and things like that, obviously we create videos of what we do, the things that we find, potential evidence, and present it all in video format so that people can join in with that and decide for themselves, what they think of the evidence that we found.
Yeah.
And just really to share that, and paranormal TV is really popular, but I think it's really nice for people to be able to see local content as well as that. In addition to that, I've actually starting to help out with the second season of a podcast, which is being produced by MediaWorks, which is called What the F Was That?
Oh, cool.
And they've actually just, the first series of that has just been revealed to be a finalist for the National New Zealand Radio Awards in the podcast
cool.
category. So that's super exciting. So going out and investigating with them too, helping with equipment and techniques and things. And yeah, so lots going on. Keep your eye out on the Haunted New Zealand Facebook page as well for the videos that are going to be coming up.
Cool.
I have a lot of voiceover work to do.
I'll get you guys going here, and I will try and find that and post that link in the comments.
Sure.
So as well as Lana's page and stuff like that. So tonight's topic, we're going to talk about nurses with experiences in their hospitals, or where they work, or some people even do home nursing and things like that, where I'm sure they've had experiences and things like that. So it's my understanding that Kim, you have quite a few stories.
Yes, I have quite a few. Would you like me to talk about a few?
Absolutely. Yes, that's why we're here.
All right. So a bit about me is, once I graduated university, I worked in an oncology ward, and I've worked in oncology for about 13 years. So that's oncology, for those of you who don't know, are people who have been diagnosed with cancer. And a lot of people with cancer end up passing away. Some end up cured, so that's good too, but we had a lot pass away, especially on the ward. I now also work in a hospice, a local hospice here, and deal with people who are imminently dying a lot. And actually their stories are very interesting, especially when they come towards the end, and it's another one I can share with you. But in the beginning, when I was a baby nurse, I was doing one of my first night shifts, and on the night shift you would have 3 nurses that were on for that night shift, about 10 patients. One night we were sitting at the nurses' station. I was just sort of trying to make a plan for my night to see how it would go, and the phone rang. And as I look at the phone, I'm like, oh, that's coming from room 3. But hang on, no one is in room 3. That room is empty. And so I answer the phone. I go, hello, Kimberly speaking, and nothing. There's just maybe someone crying on the end of the line, like a woman at the end of the line. And I thought, and she wasn't answering me. She just kept crying. So I put the phone down. My colleagues were like, who's that? I said, well, I don't know. Someone was just crying. So, oh, don't worry, I'll go down. I'll take the torch and I'll go have a look. And they're like, no, that's creepy. I don't want to go down there. Don't go by yourself. I'm like, well, you're going to come with me? No. Yeah. Go down by myself. So I go down and go into room 3, and I get this bit of an odd feeling, and I look in and I can't see anybody. So I start putting my, walking in. And as I do, the crying stops. But then I notice that the telephone with the wire hanging down is just swinging, and no one there. And I look around the bed, no one's there, no one's in the bathroom. That room is completely empty, and they would have had to walk past me to, we would have had to cross paths in some way, and there was no one there. And I thought, oh, that's odd. A bit about that, what happened in that room a couple of days before, there was a newly married woman, and she just found out she was pregnant and only had just been diagnosed with cancer a couple of days before her admission, but it was quite advanced cancer. Very sad. She ended up dying a week later, and she was pregnant, so all that, and it was all very quick, and I reckon she just didn't really have enough time to process it all, and then it was the end. And then other times we'll be sitting at the nurse's station, and I'm talking to another nurse, and in the corner of my eye I see this really big white. There was no features. You just saw the outline of white head, shoulders, and sort of from the torso down, they were missing. But they were coming up to the nurse's station and then walked past the nurse's station. Well, the woman I was talking to, I saw it from the corner of my eye. The woman I was talking to was, full on, and she just went white. And she absolutely started to freak out. I said, there was just something there that was see-through, wasn't there. And they go, yes. And she had to go home. She could not finish the shift. She went home sick because she's no way because she's down there.
Wow.
Would have other times where we would put in a man into a room. He's like, oh, I'm not going in there. Oh, no. And I say, why not? He's like, there's 7 ghosts in there just all around. I'm not going in there. We're like, oh, well, we're full. Oh, no, I'm not going. You can't put me in there. And just a few other things like that.
Have you ever gotten your camera out and
No.
or something like that? Oh, you got to do that.
I have. There's times where when I walk through, because this is Auckland Hospital, and there's a really old part of Auckland Hospital, and it's kind of, they built a new part next to it, but you've still got that old big tall structure.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the morning I would go that way through that old building, and there'll be no one there, and it'll be dark and doors will be locked. And it really felt like you were walking through an abandoned building. It was really cool. I felt like I wanted to take my camera out then. But then I thought,
or at least carry a recorder or something.
Yeah. I mean, there are times that people have refused to be by themselves in that area.
Yeah.
I just want to say a nice little story we had recently in the hospice that I work in. Is we had a patient who unfortunately was admitted and unfortunately was coming to the end of their life and passed away in that room. A couple of days later, we got another patient, and unbeknownst to anybody else, but these two knew each other.
Yeah.
They were colleagues at some work that they did. And as the new patient arrives in the exact same room that other man was placed in, it's like, oh, Gary's here, and says the patient. And so Gary, I don't know if that was his name, he died. He was one that died a few days beforehand. That family did not know that other man had passed away, but it was very comforting for the wife to know that Gary had stayed there and was there to help him. And so she relaxed fully. And then he would just keep talking to Gary that was there, and they were having, good catch up. And then when he passed away, the wife felt like he wasn't alone, which was very comforting.
Yeah.
And I have to say that then next day when I got to work, they're like, Kim, did we have a story for you? And so, yeah, that was very interesting.
That reminds me of a story that I was just listening to. I picked up an audiobook from Raymond Moody. I think it was called Guiding Light. I have to check and see what it was called, just so I give you the right name for it. Glimpses. No, I got that completely wrong, so it's just as well I checked. It's called Glimpses of Eternity by Dr. Raymond Moody, and he is actually a medical doctor. And he's the guy that wrote Life After Life. Life After Life was first published in 1975. And what was really interesting about that book is it contained loads of personal experiences of people's own encounters whilst they were dying, and then obviously brought back from death. So loads of personal experience, near-death experiences, which he, interviewed people, took them all down in detail, and found all of these common denominators and all of these stories now that we routinely hear about. People going towards the light and having a sensation of warmth and love, and noticing their loved ones coming towards them. It was really Dr. Raymond Moody who originally collated all of this information and put it together and brought it to the public consciousness. And apparently Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote Death and Dying, wrote the foreword for his book, and they anticipated that maybe he might sell about 5 million copies of it. 5,000 copies of it when it first came out. It's actually one of the biggest non-fiction books ever written in terms of the number of copies sold, and it was just completely groundbreaking. But what happened as a result of that was he just then ended up with an absolute flood of stories from other people. And he says that loads of them came from people in the medical profession. Because obviously people who are nurses and doctors and hospice workers are working very closely with death. And so it makes sense that they would have paranormal encounters relating to people being in the process of dying. One of the stories that he talks about, which just, Kim's story just reminded me of it. They had an Alzheimer's patient in a hospice, I think, and he was right at the end of his life. And he started talking to Hugo and suddenly became very, very lucid. He got to the point where, he didn't recognize his family and he didn't know where or when he was in space and time. But, became very lucid and having these very sensible conversations with Hugo. And the doctors and nurses thought, maybe this was, a friend of his who had passed away. But in fact, his family advised them that actually it was his brother who was completely alive and well. Or so they thought. And it then transpired that this conversation with Hugo, his brother, had taken place shortly after, unbeknownst to them. His brother had in fact passed away unexpectedly. And so he was having a conversation with his deceased brother.
Wow.
And nobody knew that he had died. But
that's interesting, because also there's another story I have, and it didn't happen inside a hospital, but it was while I was looking after my father-in-law when he was dying 2 years ago. And he was dying in his home, so we kind of moved the family into the home to be with him, and so I could administer pain relief and care for him as needed. About 3 days before he died, I was trying to, it was nighttime, it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I thought, well, I really need to get to sleep, because at that stage he was waking sort of every 3 hours in pain. So I thought, almost like a newborn baby, that I'd have to get up and administer pain relief to him. So I thought, I better get to sleep. But honestly, it felt like our bedroom was so stuffed full of people that it was so full that I'd look outside the ranch slider, because it was summer, it was in between Christmas and New Year, summer for New Zealand, and we had the ranch slider open to let the breeze in, and I'm seeing shadows out there as if people are walking around and waiting out there. And I think, try sleeping when it feels like there's hundreds of eyes looking at you. It's really quite difficult. It was all lovely. Nothing felt terrible, but it just felt very crowded. And suddenly either my left or right, I can't remember, one of my toes gets pulled. And it was so, with such force that the sheets moved. And then I realized that was his mother, because we had this discussion a couple of months before that I said to Gary, because we were talking about this, because at the time before he was diagnosed, he didn't believe in life after death at all, and that was it. Once you're dead, you're dead. But he liked to discuss it the more unwell he became. He was like, no, I actually think there probably is something for us at the end. And I said, what made you think of that? He's like, well, just before my mum passed away, I told her that if there is, some life after death, you must show me by pulling on my big left or right toe, I can't remember.
wow.
And he goes, I've experienced it a few times. I think that's mum. Anyway, I knew his mother in life, but we weren't close that I would know a smell or what she would, but she knew that I knew that pulling on the left or right toe would be her. And I got pulled, and I'm like, oh, it's his mum. I said, oh, it's all his family. They're all here.
Oh.
The next day, I talked to Lynette. I was like, oh, do I say something? But Lynette's very spiritual, and she believes in this stuff. So I thought, no, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to know that there's lots of family and friends here. So I said, about 10 o'clock last night, I was lying in bed, and it felt like the room was full of people, and my toe got pulled. And she goes, funny you say that, because Gary woke up fully lucid and said, they're all here. They've come to get me, but they're with Mark and Kim. And I was like,
Wow.
they really were all with me, but I couldn't see them all. I could feel them. Anyway, a couple of days go on past, and on the last night before he died, I slept in his room because my mother-in-law was just so exhausted and she needed proper rest. So I said, I'll sleep with him. You go sleep. Charlotte can go sleep with my husband and you can have Charlotte's bed. So we did that. And I wake up at 5 a.m. to hear him absolutely having this conversation with nobody. Like, yep. Okay, I'm ready. And it was so clear. And before he was not responsive at all. And I thought, oh, this is a conversation that I'm not supposed to be privy to. So like I just rolled over and pretended that I was, and then later on that night he passed away. But just before he did pass away, my mum had come to help me settle him for the evening, and we'll give him a wash and we'll just make him comfortable and looking clean and tidy. And I said, Mum, before you go, let's have a cup of tea. So I made her a cup of tea, and she was sitting at the dining room, and from his bedroom I saw a black shadow go woof, like past us and follow to where my mother-in-law was. So again, this is another, I see it from the corner of my eye, but my mum's like looking at it, and I said to Mum, did you just see that black shadow that just... Mum's like, yep, I saw that black shadow. And I'm like, oh, it's scary. He's going. He's saying goodbye to everybody. And he's going. And she goes, no, I agree. And then about an hour later, half later,
Wow.
But that was just some confirmation that, he was going, because he was so scared of death. Like, he was so fearful of it that even couple of days before he became unconscious, he's like, I'm still going to fight this. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to beat this. And that just broke my heart, because clearly we're not winning this fight. And he was in so much pain that,
I got to think that's probably common for people that don't believe in anything after life. That's they probably, they really want to hold on because they've got nothing to look forward to, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's the really comforting thing about reading about people who have had near-death experiences, is that regardless of your religious or spiritual beliefs, I think it actually does provide compelling evidence that there is something else that's out there. And I think as people who are, collectively all interested in the paranormal, really we tend to focus on ghosts, don't we?
Yeah.
And almost to the exclusion of lots of other things that happen around that or that might be related to it. And I think at the heart of that is a belief or an understanding that the essence of us, which you might call your soul or your spirit, is separate from your physical body. And so therefore all of these things kind of spring from that. Ghosts therefore would be souls that have become separated from their physical body under some circumstances, and remain on earth for whatever reason, through choice or accident or trauma, because it was a sudden death and they don't realize that they've passed. And then I think also that it makes sense as well in terms of astral projection and out-of-body experiences, that we can experience things entirely separate from our physical bodies. I mean, my daughter said to me this morning, she's 9 years old, but she's kind of fascinated with witchcraft, and she's always trying to get me to prove things to her. Can you do this? Can you make me fly? So I sort of maybe perhaps mistakenly tried to have a conversation with her. I know that she understands this concept of, separation of the spiritual essence and the body. I sort of tried to suggest that, if you can learn how to separate the two, actually you can fly, but your body's going to stay where it is. But I think it's kind of at the root of everything that we look at here. And I think learning about other people's experiences and exposing ourselves to those things can provide huge comfort, both to us, as mortals, because death is an intrinsic part of life, but also as people who, as we all proceed through life, suffer bereavements as well. And, I lost my dad in November 21. And, he was a huge part of my life, but I know that his spiritual beliefs very much aligned quite closely with my own. And I find huge comfort in knowing that what, you know, that fundamental essence of him, his soul, his spirit, continues on, even if the bit that I could hug and have a chat with easily isn't here anymore. One of the interesting things that I've learned of recently then is shared death experiences. So that's not just one person themselves having a near-death experience. There are lots of examples where other people have shared in someone else's death experience. So one of the things that can happen at death is like a life review. So like, you know, your life flashes before your eyes. At death, you kind of see everything that happened. And there have been lots of people who have reported, whilst sitting with their loved one at the point of dying, where this life review has happened and they experienced it too. And they could see everything going on around them, and they could see every aspect of this person's life, both the parts that they shared and everything that happened even before they met. And I think the fascinating part of that is that they've learned information or seen people that they could then actually go and verify had happened, or that those people existed in the way that they saw, which I think is fascinating. I mean, that's
Well, I think
very convincing.
so. Lana wants to start a project that ties in with all of this, and I think this project idea that you have it's probably your main purpose is, you know, to help people understand death more. Correct? Is that one of the goals of it? And specifically, why don't you tell us about this project and specifically what you're looking for and what you want people to do?
Well, I'll tell you how it started. It was just I'd met my son's midwife. He's coming up to 21. And we've kind of always bumped into each other. Lovely lady, obviously retired. And we met her for lunch several weeks ago, and she just told me about all the spirits that she'd seen. Never spoke about it before. And it just felt so exciting to hear her point of view and her speaking in this way. I'd not heard us talk like this before. So it was extremely interesting. That got me thinking that there must be other people out there with similar experiences. So I kind of... Then I approached Cleo, and Cleo was like, well, I know just the person.
Do I have a person for you?
And she did, and it was him. So we kind of, so we are working in collaboration and putting things together, which I feel tie in with the whole experience for individuals, because it's not just perhaps nurses that will experience this, it's other medical staff, possibly services, rescue services that have been, you know, there when things have happened. And, you know, it would be nice to sort of find people to share these stories with. And I think that it would bring about a lot of comfort for other people too. It's not necessarily important for, you know, people to discriminate, the ordinary person who might see a ghost, to discriminate what that is, whether that is an out-of-body experience, just a near-death experience, somebody who has stepped out of the body for a short time and gone back. If the conditions are right, they are going to see that, that particular person, whether it be a ghost, a spectre, however you want to, call it. But I think that's interesting for us three to be able to sort of research all of that and, find out a lot more about the theories behind it, such as, people talk a lot about the stone tape theories, and then there is the water, memory of water as well. Can't remember the name of the doctor. Cleo, you will know. But he investigated. What is the? I can't remember his name. But he investigated, and he had 3 sort of jars of rice, didn't he? And he put the rice, and he spoke to one particular, the first jar of rice, and he spoke in a nice way. The second jar of rice he called an idiot, and then the third jar of rice he just ignored. So after a month, they reassessed it, and the first jar of rice was fermenting nicely, and it was giving off a nice aromatic fragrance. The second jar was turning black, and the other one had just rotted. So it was kind of, I quite like the theories behind what can happen with our thoughts, with our energy, with memory, with our personalities after we die. You know, so it's going to involve quite a lot of things, not just people's experiences, which is extremely important, and we want to highlight those. And also we want to so we've created a page called Nursing Ghosts. I only created it this morning. So.
It's got more followers than my page, so I did post the link in the comments. So if anybody wants to go join that
fantastic.
page, just click on those links.
Please do.
I
Let
did
us
see
know your stories.
Rebecca Roaden. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing your surname, Rebecca. She says she's a med tech for senior community, and she witnesses strange things after residents pass. So we'd love to talk to you and to hear about your experiences as well, if you'd like to share them with us. So
I don't know about you, Rebecca, but there are times where we've had patients that have passed away, and you walk into their room to get them all ready to be taken away by the funeral director, and sometimes you feel that they're just standing right behind you watching your every move, and so you're trying to be that, give the person the utmost respect, because you can feel that they're just there watching you, still there. And sometimes what I've noticed is that patients who haven't yet passed away, but I know that their spirit, soul, essence, whatever you like, has already left, but it's their body that is now just slowly shutting down. But some will linger. I feel some linger for a while. I had another experience when I was working in Perth, when I worked there for about 3 years in oncology, hematology more, and we had some patients that were passing away, and there was a room full of family, which is great, but I just wanted to pop my head just to make sure that everyone was okay. They didn't need anything. And as I popped in, it felt like I felt some hands on my shoulders. If someone goes, "Oh, just excuse me, just scooching past," and I went, "Oh, sorry," and I looked back, and there was no one.
Wow.
And one of the family members is like, "You just felt someone walk past you, didn't you?" And I go, "Yes." He goes, "Yeah, I kind of got that too." I just wow. That one. Yeah.
Have you experienced like, so let's say, although I got to say, at a hospice facility, it's probably daily occurrence that people pass away. At least
can be. So sometimes we'll go a week or two with no one, because we also let people come and stay when they've got symptom control. So they're otherwise okay, but are suffering from pain issues which are being hard to control. So we'll get them in, get the pain under control, and then they can go back home. But sometimes, a lot of the time, they do get admitted for end of life. And sometimes we'll get none for 2 weeks, and then we'll get 3 or 4 in one day. So I almost feel like, and I know I don't mean to sound insensitive, but I almost feel like if you believe in death and like the Grim Reaper just sort of does a round and then goes away for a little bit and then comes back and then does another round. But, you never know.
I was going to ask, so like, have you ever felt that like maybe some of the patients that passed away are still there for a while? Okay.
Funny you say that, because they've moved my office now to what was a patient's room. at the back of the hospice. It's quite dark and it's a bit cool, but I quite enjoy it there.
Yeah.
And occasionally I'll have my door open so that people can just come in. And being the educator, I need to be there for any queries or anything. And sometimes I'll be typing away on my computer and I'll see someone walk in and then I'll look up. Oh, no one there. We'll just continue on. And I just feel like, and my boss will come in and she goes, oh, it's creepy down here. And I'm like, not creepy. It's lovely. And she's like, righto.
Don has a really, really good question. Oh, sorry, Cleo, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I actually think there's I also saw Don's thing too, so that's definitely worth mentioning. But I think that if you understand ghosts as just being people who aren't living in their bodies anymore, I think you can understand it more as not being creepy. You know, ghosts are just people. They're just not wearing their meat suit any longer. Driving a skeleton.
They're all just, it's a nice feel. And a lot of some of my colleagues, and I'll be like, oh, I just saw something, and go, so did I. And then they're like, there's lots here, you know. And I said, oh yes, I'm very aware of it. But they're all lovely. There's nothing that's nasty here. She goes,
yeah.
Sorry, Don, I'm just reading your question. I've not, I don't know if end of life unconsciousness is like a coma, but I haven't, apart from my father-in-law who was unconscious, saw the shadow, and then about an hour later died. That's what I've witnessed. I haven't looked after anyone in a coma due to like brain death, brain injury, and everything like that, unfortunately. But there'll be some people out there that I'm sure have experienced something.
I was looking at a story with is it Mark Hammond from the
yes, from the Top Gear.
And he'd had a very nasty accident, and he'd been in a coma.
Hammond.
Is it Richard?
Richard Hammond. It's Richard, isn't it?
It's one or the other.
Mr. Hammond.
Right now.
Mr. Hammond unfortunately had a serious accident, and one of many I've heard. But he was in a coma, and he was in a serious state, and it looked like he wasn't going to pull through. And he'd kind of, to him, while he was in a coma, he was walking through the Lake District. And he was walking up this certain hill towards this certain tree. And he felt this feeling of impending doom, like he was going to be in trouble for something. You know, when you're a child and you think, oh, I'm going to get told off. It was like that feeling. And he said it just got stronger and stronger as he was approaching this tree. And he was actually telling a story from this very tree. If you look it up. And it's very interesting. It's a short one, but it's worth looking at. And then at the same time, what he didn't realize what was happening was the doctor was telling his wife he wasn't really going to make it. And she said, can I shout at him? And he said, yes. And she said, can I shout very loud? And he said, yes. So she said, don't you dare leave me. Don't you dare die on me and leave me. So that was the sense of impending, he was in trouble.
Yeah. Wow.
And it brought him out of the coma. And he turned round at the tree and walked back.
That's
when
incredible.
He felt that feeling. Yeah. So, you could have seen him walking towards that tree.
I have heard stories of other people, sort of dying on near death, and they're in hospital and they're being, lifted up to the heavens or wherever they see the light. It's lovely, it's warm, it's inviting.
Yes.
And then they get told, stop, you can either choose to come back, but if you come back, it's going to be painful, it's going to be a hard road, and you can choose to come. And a lot of the time people would choose to go over to the other side because it's so nice and inviting. But there was this one woman who heard her daughter, who was only about 10, go, "Mommy, Mommy, come back, come back,
Wow.
come back." That she goes, "No, I have to come back for my daughter."
Hmm.
But she goes, if it wasn't for her, she would have chosen to keep going. So,
Yeah.
she completely in that space of passing over she goes, I felt very selfish because it was all about me. I didn't think about anybody else. And if it wasn't for her daughter calling her back, she wouldn't go.
I think that actually also raises a really important point, which is that even though we think people can't hear us,
Yes.
those things that they can, and their consciousness is still present, even if it might be elsewhere, but their senses are still perfectly functional. My dad used to tell a story where I think there was quite a serious car accident that he'd witnessed, and he stopped to help, and I don't think that there was really anything much that could be done. But this person was lying, slowly dying, unfortunately, in the wreck of their car. And some other witness turned up and took one look at him and said, "Oh, he's a goner." And my dad got really angry at this person and basically said, don't dare say things like that in front of people, because they can still hear you. And it's not what you want to hear, is it? You want somebody to hold your hand and say, don't worry, it's okay, you're safe, I'm with you, there's nothing to worry about, everything's going to be okay. And maybe we don't all know that or don't all understand that, but I think that's something that perhaps people in our position who can have these conversations can put out there to the world that can help. I think just because you're not it is important.
People don't realize because they look as though they're in a coma, or they're in a serious situation, but they can hear. And I think I was looking at see if I get his name right. Sam Thania, I think it is, in NYU Medical School. I actually looked at that earlier, and that seemed interesting because he seems to be going into resuscitation and researching that on a deeper level. So I think that I might sort of look a little bit further into that as well. He was talking about the cells actually living after we are dead, or past is dead.
So what's classed as clinically dead is when your heart has stopped beating and you are not breathing, you are clinically dead. And so some people have cardiac arrest and are clinically dead, but you've got that time to be able to resuscitate them. And so it makes a whole lot of sense that what you're saying. So,
yes,
definitely, I just want to, at this point, as you just talked about, cardiac arrest and stuff like that, I've got 2 books that I just want to suggest to people if you are interested in these things. These are books which were recommended to me by a professor who ran a parapsychology course at the University of Edinburgh that I sat recently. And this book is a collection of stories and experiences about people's near-death experience. So it's called Consciousness Beyond Life, and it's written by Dr. Pim van Lommel, and he's actually a cardiologist. So for people who might think that this is all a little bit woo and a little bit unscientific, when you actually have medical doctors who are exposed to these kind of experiences all the time, to the extent that they can actually write quite a substantial book about it, I think that adds quite a weight of evidence towards it. The other one is Stephen Browde, and called Immortal Remains, The Evidence for Life After Death. And this is also just a really lovely kind of summary of evidence based on near-death experiences and evidence for life after death. So those are 2 really, really good books, in addition to anything that you can find by Rainer Moody.
I've got a question relating to that. So we all talk about, going to the light, and there's all these beautiful stories and this and that and the other thing. Is there any darker stories, like people that don't want to go because it's not light, it's not good? Have you guys ever heard of any stories like that where it's a terrifying experience?
Can't say that.
No one?
No.
Okay.
And
I guess that's a good thing, but
actually, Chris McKinnell, obviously the co-founder of the Warren Legacy Foundation, along with his grandmother, Lorraine Warren. Chris and I have kind of talked at length about our ideas of life and the universe and death and what happens, and we actually have quite an aligned viewpoint on kind of how we see death and God, or the divine. And I don't personally subscribe to the idea of hell or negative evil consequences for people who do bad things. That's not to say that I don't think some people deserve that, because I think they probably do, but what we kind of, and apologies, Chris, if I have misinterpreted anything that we've ever discussed, but the conversations that we've had is effectively that each of our souls is just a little bit that's broken off from source, from the divine collective, the divine consciousness, that in each of us is that divine spark, and that is our own individual soul. And so we all come from that, and then after death we all return to that. And what he said is that he feels that people who are intrinsically good, loving, kind, caring, good people become closer to the center of it, closer to the light, closer to the love, and that people who are not are further away. So effectively further from God, I suppose, if you want to use, I always hesitate to use the word God, because we all have a very different understanding of what that means to us. But whatever your spiritual or religious beliefs are, I think we can perhaps all understand that, in a non-denominational context, that we all return to a place, if we're not good souls, that we return to a place that's perhaps farther from it, but that it's still not a bad place to be, but that,
and also,
we try and get closer.
Also, I can see that, but also I also think hell is what you make it. So if you are so scared of passing away because of all the bad things you have done in life, and you're really worried about it, you are just going to be keeping reliving that in death, because it is something that you have not been able to let go. So again, I reckon hell is what you make it. You can put yourself in your own hell, if that makes sense.
And I think as well, that's why some people can get stuck here too. Sorry, Lana.
Yes.
It's because of that fear.
And also, if you are religious and you that's part of your belief, you may want to, some people might be stuck or stay on the earth plane because they fear judgment. And, that if they've done something wrong, they may not want to cross over to the other side. So there could be that.
They may not want to leave. I mean, they may not, say if someone had died in, a prison, and they're quite happily staying in that prison for fear that if they leave that prison, they're going to have some form of judgment.
Yes.
That's all. It's. I mean, that's all very, very interesting, and in fact, it kind of ties into what we're gonna do on the next show. We're gonna have Paul Goddard on, and we're going to get into this past life regression stuff, and rumor has it that I'm going to actually do a session with him, and we're going to show it.
Wow!
I don't know who organized that.
Yeah. So we had it set up to where I was going to do it, not this past weekend, the weekend before, and just something came up. It's like, no, I need to keep my guard up right now. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be hypnotized that weekend, but we're probably going to do that this coming weekend. We'll do that, and then we're going to tape it and then show that on the show, and have him on as a guest and talk about that. That was actually a pretty popular show when he was on last time.
Yeah,
people really, really liked that topic. So
they do.
I think it's fascinating.
Yeah,
it is.
And I don't want to say skeptical of past lives, but I guess I'm open-minded to. Okay, I'm open-minded to it. I don't know that I am there yet, but I am very open-minded to it. That's why I'm willing to try it. So
I think it is fascinating, and I think it's exactly the same thing, though, that if you if you can accept the separation of the spirit from the physical body,
Yep.
and then a return to source or whatever you want to call it, that then
Yeah.
it's possible entirely for us to come back and live a whole
new
different
clothes.
human experience.
Yeah.
New clothes.
I just
wanted to.
go
Sorry.
ahead.
Oh,
No,
I just had a little story that I wanted to tell you that
Yes, please do.
I just listened to. It's it was a lady who's actually a doctor, and it was one of she told her story to Raymond Moody, and it was the first example of a shared death experience that he had heard of, and this lady was with her mother, and her mother suffered a cardiac arrest. And so she gave CPR to her own mother for a huge amount of time, something like 30 minutes. And before, realizing that obviously, it was futile trying to, continue and bring her back, and that her mother was gone. And so she stopped CPR. And at the moment that happened, she came out of her own body. She stopped, and she was resting and trying to recover from the, very physical exertion of doing CPR, which is an exhausting thing if you're doing it properly. And she came out of her own body, and she was looking down upon the body of her recently deceased mother and her own body down on the ground. And she was aware that her mother was with her in spirit, standing next to her. And she said that she saw this light appear. I think she said there was like a rupture in the universe, which I thought was a fascinating way of describing it. A rupture in the universe. And she said from this, she said it kind of opened up, and all of this light came flooding in. But then she became aware of the souls, I guess, of loved ones, and also that she knew who had passed away, but also people that she didn't know who were all coming in. And that she then saw her mum go into this light, and then she said it all kind of closed up, sort of did this sort of strange spirally thing and closed, and she was back in her own body again. She said, but instead of being a moment then which should have been extremely distressing for her, it became something which was a very comforting experience that she had shared in this moment of her mum's passing, which I thought was spectacular.
Yeah.
Yes.
Leanne, I just saw your question, your statement about the some people being stuck don't know they're dead. I certainly agree with that, especially for those that were super quick, super you get stories of people just crossing the road, some their car takes them out, and then you get videos of what people think is the spirit continuing to walk on. And never know that they're dead. And I think that possibly could be a possibility as well.
I've always thought. So, have you guys all seen that movie, The Others, with Nicole Kidman?
Yes. Oh, that's such a good movie.
I've always felt that that's there could be a lot of truth to that. Like
there could be a lot of truth.
Maybe they view us as the ghosts, or that because they don't know that they're dead. And that
And then at the end of that movie, how the woman that was sort of the maid says, people will come, people will go. Sometimes you'll feel them, sometimes you won't. And it was just such a perfect ending, and so, it was great.
Yeah. That was definitely a twist I didn't see coming. Like that, the way that ends, I was like, oh
yes.
And I should have probably said spoiler alert before we talked about that. But I assume everybody's seen that movie already because it's older. So let's talk one more time. So we're almost gonna wrap it up here pretty soon, but let's talk about that project one more time, Lena. I mean, tell where people can go if they've got stories they want to share, specifically what kind of stories you're talking about, because you don't want just anybody telling you ghost stories. This is a specific thing that you're looking for.
It's experience of actually, witnessing or seeing spirit leave the body, or spirit being around them within a working situation. So that could be at the hospital, as with Kim, or it could be if you've been called to your emergency services, you've been called to a situation, you may have witnessed something there. Whatever your story is, please forward them on to us at what we called again, Nursing Ghosts.
Yeah, yeah.
The name may change because I want to encompass everybody. And Dana had a good idea about the name, and Kim as well. So we'll come up with a name, and we'll try and sort of cover everything in
Yeah,
that.
there's the link in the comments, just so everybody knows.
There's a link.
Oh,
So don't worry about the name.
Yeah.
The link's there. If you
Yep.
have experiences and you have stories to share with us, come and join that group and yeah.
What I
share.
would like to do as well is choose a story perhaps once a month and do a narration of that story. So tell the story. It could be Cleo has got a nice voice. Kim's got a nice voice.
I've got a nice voice, Lana.
Yeah.
I send people to sleep.
Yeah, like I said, anytime we have you people from over there, on the show, it definitely elevates the show a little bit just because of the accents. Not to mention what you guys contribute, but there's always that little extra because of the accent. So
That's very sweet.
yeah. So Lana, one more time, why don't you give a shout out to your pages and what you do? Because you have Spirit Vibe and you do.
Yes, I forgot about
psychic
all.
drawings. Yeah, go ahead. Tell people where they can find you and what you do.
Yes, so I'm a psychic artist and medium, so I draw spirit, which could be a loved one who's passed away, it could be a spirit guide, it could be a past life. I do tap into past lives for some reason, because they link with the spirit guides. So that's basically me. My group page, private group page is Spirit Vibe. But also you can get me on Artist Lana. That's more my personal page, but then I can redirect you to other pages if you want, if you're interested. TikTok is Lana_Spirit Vibe. So do look out on TikTok because I do demonstrate channeling spirit and drawing. So,
And I like your TikTok videos and your drawings and your telling the stories.
Yeah.
They're fantastic.
That's so good.
So you guys know why I jumped up. Like, I'm not being dramatic. I'm not making this up. Something just walked in the hallway, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't my wife. That's why I was and I jumped up. So I don't know what that was all about.
Well, actually, before when I stood up, I had a knocking at my door here that's closed and a vibration, and I went to open it, and it was. Thank God it was the cat, but we've had this stuff like this happen.
Yeah, Chris actually has a story from your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, when Kim was speaking earlier, I did hear another voice, so it might be worth.
Going back and watching.
It's normal at my house. Let's just put it that way.
She has a collection of spirit friends.
We actually had a little a friend who's got a little boy who's 4 come for lunch, and then that night when they got home, and he's like, "Oh, there's a black shadow in my wardrobe, and it's come from Auntie Kimmy's house. Auntie Kimmy has hundreds of ghosts in her house." And she's just like, "Oh, my son just said this." So I was like, "Oh."
That's probably another show for another day, though. Is the fact kids seeing spirits, why they're so apt to it, because I believe that they really are if they're not making it up. But, so Kim, what do you have any social media pages or anything like that you?
Well, mine's just Haunted New Zealand, and that's really about it. I don't do TikTok or Instagram or anything
You're
like
probably
that.
better off for it.
I do it through Haunted New Zealand.
Okay.
And then just Kimberly Lindrum is my personal, if anyone wants to contact through there. Yeah,
TikTok is kind of, no offense, Lana, I know you like it, and I love it too, but it is kind of the armpit of social media.
I didn't go near it. I just know I'd be addicted to it in about 2 seconds. I'd never do anything ever again.
That's why I put that meme up of the guy holding the cross when you said about the TikTok thing. Just stay away from it. That shit is bad. So Cleo, where can people? where can people find you at again? I know you said it at the beginning, but go ahead and say it one more
Yep,
time.
you can also find me on the Haunted New Zealand Facebook page. We also have a website at hauntednz.com. You can contact me on my personal page as well. Also, if you haven't listened to it, if you have Rover, Apple, Spotify, whatever, do check out the What the F Was That podcast as well, which is paranormal investigation with a comedic twist.
Is it F, the letter F, or is it EFF?
It's the letter F, yes.
I'm writing this down.
They were originally going to call it the whole rude word, but
They decided against it.
They decided against it, yes. And it may have caused them some problems with broadcasting. But Nicole Ray asked if I was on Campfire, and I don't know if anybody know what Campfire is, but
I don't.
Sorry,
No.
Nicole. I'll see if I can find your comment later and find out what that is. Yes, warrenlegacy.com if you want to contact the foundation, if you want to join the foundation, if you need help with the paranormal, if you're media and you want anybody from the foundation to interview or you want photographs or information, warrenlegacy.com has everything that you need. And also we do put links up there to videos of previous podcasts and stuff as well.
Yep.
So.
And the Warren Files YouTube page will have all of these shows that are all archived. So yeah, just look up Warren Files on YouTube. So that's where you can see all of our shows.
Fantastic.
So here we go. I think it's a wrap it up time. We've been trying to keep it about an hour recently. It started out, it was 2 hours. You know what I mean? The original shows where it's like, man, sometimes you just drag it on and you're talking about the 4 weeks before. And, so trying to keep it around an hour, I think is good. So thank you everybody for joining. I know like Lana, and it's what, like 3 a.m. where you're at now?
3 minutes past 2.
Okay.
Ooh.
So
I was going to say I could easily go for another hour, but maybe Lana might start to play.
Don't you
It
dare.
It's only 1 p.m. here.
yeah, and it's probably
Oh,
nice.
it's
What's the
lunchtime.
weather like in New Zealand?
Raining at the moment.
Oh,
But is it? Are you guys still in summer, or are you guys fall?
No,
or what?
we're in autumn now.
We're in autumn.
Autumn.
we're in autumn.
Starting to
disappointing.
get cold.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
starting.
But I'm just-
We're starting to get into summer. It was actually like today was the first day that it was hot here for a while. It was
Oh,
mid
nice.
70s.
Wow.
Over the weekend, it was in the 30s and 20s, but so that's Ohio weather. We
I'm
go
going to
from-
mention the UK weather.
Yeah, 20s one day to 70s. 2 days later, it's crazy.
Can you guys move over to the metric system? Because
Yeah.
you guys talk about the temperature and it's
No.
always completely meaningless to me. Like, what is that in centigrade exactly?
Yeah, because
I don't know.
It's been lovely in New Zealand for the last few days. Actually, we had a bit of a rubbish summer, but autumn in New Zealand actually is often really nice. It's been in the 20s, which is nice and warm, whatever that is.
20s
in
is warm. Oh,
Fahrenheit.
God.
Yeah.
20 degrees Celsius. So
Yeah. That's
what
kind of
is that?
20 here is you better get your coat and your hat and your gloves and all that stuff and
See?
have fun.
We're
What-
about -3.
Oh my gosh! In
What are you talking
April.
I'm just joking. But it's cold. It's cold. It's nowhere near. It's not even 9, I don't think.
Oh my goodness. Lana, we need to bring you over.
Yeah.
We'll import you.
Cross the light.
That would be great.
So
Cross you over to
Thanks.
the sunshine.
well, thank you everybody for watching, and we will be back in 2 weeks where I will be hypnotized on
Yes.
the show. So we'll
Looking
see where that
forward
goes. Like I said, I'm looking at it with an open mind. I'm not going in, completely skeptical, but we're going to record it because I have a feeling that I'm going to resist. And no one wants to sit there and watch me try and go under for
Resist.
an hour.
Yeah.
10 hour live. So we're going to do that. We're going to record that session, but then we'll play it. So thank you all again, and we will see you in, where's the thing at? Shoot. And we will see you in 2 weeks.